Today I wanted to talk about how to EV train your Pokemon in Pokemon Champions. There's quite a lot that goes into EV training, and that's why the most common question on this channel so far is, where do I find the spreads? Which brings us to why. Why would you want to be able to EV train your Pokemon? After all, you might say, hey, I can just get this team that someone else made for me, I'll just play that, I don't need to learn this at all. First of all, you get to train up teams without public spreads. Anytime you see a really cool team from a limitless tournament or from a regional and the original creator hasn't shared the spreads, now you'll at least be able to create something that gets close so you can try and play it for yourself. This gives you a big edge because a bunch of pros are not going to be sharing all their spreads right after their event if they still have another event coming up. Some of these spreads are simply going to stay private. So if you want to play the team, you'll have to learn how to do it yourself. Secondly, of course, if you want to build your own teams, you're going to have to learn how to do this anyway. And finally, and probably the most important actually, because you might as well say, I'm never building my own teams, I'll always play other people's teams, you will play better by being able to do this. After all, you don't know which moves are safe if you don't know why certain spreads are the way they are. If your Incineroar is sitting in front of a Sneasler and you don't know the EV spread you're running, you don't know if you can click Parting Shot into that Sneasler or if the close combat is going to take you out. Similar story for an Incin in front of a Basculegion, similar story for your Charizard in front of a Rock Slide. You kind of do need to know what EV spreads are trying to do in order to know how to play a team in the first place. So even if you're never gonna spread your own team, you sadly need to learn about EVs. Now the first level of EV training, in my opinion, is vibes. Whenever you pick up a team for the first time where there aren't any public spreads or whatever, you are going to just have to vibe it out. And this is how a lot of people built their first teams early on in a regulation. If you remember my Floette Rain Balance team that I hit Master Ball with on day one, of course there were no public spreads. And there was no metagame yet. We couldn't know what was good, what people would play, which mons they would run. We didn't know anything. So how do you even figure out which EVs you're going to be using? And it's literally just vibes. But of course, vibes isn't just random. You still need to kind of know where the vibes are taking you. And so when you're going to EV your mons purely based on vibes, there's basically two questions that you're going to be asking yourself. And that is, which role is my particular Pokemon gonna fulfill on this team? And then which type of speed control do I have access to on my team? So first, when it comes to roles, basically like, is my Mon going to be a fast attacker, kind of like a glass cannon? It's gonna do a bunch of damage, and it's probably going to take a bunch of damage, but it's gonna be so fast that it's getting KOs before my opponent can take me out. Or am I gonna be a slower attacker? Maybe my Mon just doesn't really have the speed, or maybe this Mon can actually set up, you know, press a Calm Mind, press a Swords Dance, and then start taking one-hit KOs on everything in the format. Or maybe my Mon is just a support. Maybe this Mon isn't supposed to take KOs on its own, but it's actually going to help my other Mons get KOs. Maybe this Mon needs to be extremely fast to set up certain forms of speed control. Maybe it needs to be super bulky to weaken my opponents in other ways. By knowing at least what role the Pokemon is going to be playing on your team, you can already have a really good first idea as to what the EV spreads are going to have to do. Now the second question, speed control, is of course, is my team going to be fast? You know, like Tailwind? Is it going to be a Tailwind team where I click Tailwind and then I just start taking giant KOs? Am I kind of like hyper offensive in that way? Or is my team going to be ridiculously slow with Trick Room? Am I going to set up Trick Room and then my slow mons will simply overpower my opponent's too fast mons? Both of these will of course require completely different speed EVs. And so even in this first level of just kind of vibing out where you're going to be putting these EVs, you kind of already need to be taking this into account. Now there are other forms of speed control. I would say they're like softer forms of speed control because they don't affect the whole field. They kind of just affect the Pokemon in front of you, or maybe even just one Pokemon, you know, Icy Wind, Electro Web, Thunder Wave. Now level 1.5 is actually subscribing to this channel. If you enjoy content like this, it would be really appreciated. Subscribe and click the bell. So we're here in Showdown, we just have a random Floette Balance team, and let's just EV this based on the vibes, right? So we see this Floette. We know it's going to be supported by two supports. We have a Mousehold, which is going to redirect, and we have an Incin, which can help with Fake Out. If we look at the set, it is Calm Mind, so it is going to need some time to set up. That tells us that this mon needs some bulk. You know, it's going to have to survive a turn or maybe even 2 turns before it can start sweeping through a team. We also see it has Draining Kiss, so we know that after taking some hits, it can also start healing up. So really, just from the moveset, we can already know, okay, so we're going to have to set up, and we're going to afterwards heal back up. We are probably pretty bulky. And we also want to be taking a bunch of damage. You know, it's still going to do hella damage. So we do something like this. Cool. Now we have 2 points left. We put it here. We're not thinking more of this. Again, it's vibes. We just want to spread this so that we can then head onto ladder and just see what happens. Try and get a feel for the team. Oh, maybe something is too slow or too fast. It doesn't matter. At first, we just want to get a feel for the team. This will do fine. Next, we have this Delphox. We see Heatwave, Psychic, Substitute. We see it has a high speed stat. We probably want this to take some KOs quickly, because like not using this speed stat would be very sad. We also don't really have Calm Mind, so we're probably not trying to set up in that way. Like, yeah, Substitute is a form of setup, don't get me wrong. There's probably a world where you do something like this. It's possible. But my first idea is that if Floette is already kind of doing that, and it's not really setting up a Calm Mind either, I can imagine we can do something like this. You know, maybe we go Timid or Modest. It depends. It's gonna depend on what we see in the format, but I'm guessing 1, 3, 4 is so high. Maybe we just go Timid, and the last 2, sure, in HP, whatever. Then we have King Gambit. All right, this thing has a very low speed by default, so this is probably not outspeeding anything. Like, even if we do this, we see this is still not a very fast boy, so let's not even bother. We also see Swords Dance, so it probably wants to set up, and we see Sucker Punch, which is a priority move. So that tells us that even if we have low speed, we can still be faster than anything. Which means the Sucker Punch is going to have to do a bunch of damage. You know, after a Swords Dance, Sucker Punch needs to do a bunch of damage. So we're going to do this. We want to live something. Cool. The special defense here. The main reason I'm doing this is because I notice defense is already extremely high. So we might as well put it into the last defensive slot right here. Of course, putting it into special attack wouldn't do anything. And of course, we want to do a bunch of damage attack. Cool. Now, you could think, oh, what if I'm against a Trick Room team? Maybe I want this thing to be super slow then. There is a world where maybe you try to go Brave, so plus attack, minus speed. That's kind of not something you want to be really thinking about too much yet in the vibe stage. You know, it's a consideration, but right now, let's just do a bunch of attack. Then Mouse Hold. So Mouse Hold is clicking Follow Me. It's a redirector. That means it's going to have to take some hits. That tells us, all right, we're going to make it very bulky. Now, the next moves, we see Super Fang. Does half of HP. We see Taunt. That stops them from using status moves. We probably want to be fast enough so we can taunt stuff, so they can't use status moves against us. So let's do this, all right? Now we have 2 points left. Cool. You can either put them both into special defense, you can put them into defense, you can do 1-1 each. Doesn't really matter, whatever you want to do. And then finally, we want to be something like Jolly. We could even go Timid, funnily enough. Actually, Timid might be optimal, because we don't have any attacking moves that do damage that use our attack. This is pretty important to know, but basically, if you get confused, which can happen because Pelipper clicks Hurricane, you actually deal yourself damage with your own attack stat. So since this Mouse Hold doesn't have any attacking moves that use your attack stat, you might as well be minus attack. And we're going max speed again because we want to quickly Super Fang stuff. Because if we quickly Super Fang stuff, now things are half HP. Suddenly you can take them out with Floette, you can take them out with Garchomp. Fast, bulky, we're following, we can do a quick taunt. All of that makes sense to me. Next, we have Garchomp. Again, this is a relatively fast fella doing a bunch of attack, but this isn't trying to set up. You know, we don't see a Swords Dance or whatever, so we probably don't need to bulk. We don't need the time to set up. So again, I'm just going to go max. Which nature? I don't know. Well, let's go Adamant. We'll do a bunch of attack. But maybe you think, oh, but what if I'm against another Garchomp? Then maybe I want to be Jolly. Maybe I want to outspeed them. That's up to you. Again, we're in the vibe stage. This is not where we're trying to think just yet. Thinking is lame. Then we do Incineroar. Okay, so we know that Incineroar, we're going to Fake Out, we're going to Parting Shot. We're kind of like a supportive piece, right? We're definitely in that third category. We're not trying to do crazy amounts of damage. We want to support our team. We want to help this Floette set up a Calm Mind. And so, first of all, we're going to have to be bulky. We're going to have to live. Then next, we are intimidating stuff. Maybe, since things are already going to be losing their attack, we can just run a bunch of special defense. Maybe that's fine. The last 2 points in defense. All right. This is vibes-based spreads. Is this optimal? Absolutely not. But we have just used our basic thinking. We've looked at the movesets and we can kind of go like, all right, this is probably fine. We have done 252 on everything. And this will have to do when first going onto the ladder. Things will be further optimized after this, but if you don't have experience either in past formats or playing this particular team, how would you know what makes sense? You can absolutely hit a decent rank with just vibes-based EVs. There's literally someone I showed you in the warm-up challenge placing super high with all vibes EVs, not even using all their EVs. EVs are kind of overrated. You need them, but if you are losing every game with EV spreads like this, it's probably not the EV spreads. It's not optimal, but the plays are going to do more work than the EVs. Of course, once you do optimize them, it adds even more potential plays to your arsenal. But so now that we have the vibes down, you know, we kind of know what the mons are gonna do. They all have some EVs. It's time to get experience with the team, see what goes wrong. You know, maybe there's specific moves you're not living and so forth. And then we get into level 2. Now, if you have a Tailwind team, of course, this means that you can get away with investing less speed overall on your mons. Every single speed stat is going to go x2, and so in your vibes-based EVing stage, assuming you have Tailwind, you can put in a little more bulk on your mons and go maybe a little more on the offense side. Maybe instead of going jolly or timid, you can go adamant or modest on your sweepers. One big question you have to ask though is, will sometimes these sweepers be caught outside of Tailwind? Tailwind doesn't last that many turns. And so some of your mons might still need to be very fast just because you have to plan for the potential of Tailwind not being up. Now level 2 is actually thinking. We're done with the vibes. We have played a bunch of games with our team and we noticed, damn, whenever my opponent clicks this particular move, I kind of just die. And that's not great. Dying isn't great. So in order to get level 2, the most important thing we need is experience. Either it's experience from past formats. You've played with Incineroar so much that you know, oh, this Incineroar, this needs to live this one particular thing. I've seen this in Regulation Age before. Or just by playing the team just now, maybe you noticed, oh, damn, this Garchomp clicking, stomping Tantrum into my Incin, it's hurting a lot. I think we can improve that with a better spread. But you're going to need some experience at least. If you have 0 experience, there's no way you're going to go beyond vibes-based EVing because you don't even know what you're EVing for. We are really asking ourselves only one question. What can I get away with? And now that sounds kind of silly, but basically that is what EVing is about. Imagine for a moment a theoretical format where the very highest special attack you can take right now on your Garchomp, let's say, is 102% of its health. That means that if we were to put in a little bit of special defense, just enough to make that 102, maximum of 99, that means you would always survive the hit and you would always be KO'd by the second, right? That means that if you are spending any EV point beyond that hit, you are really wasting EVs. Because anything else could have gone into attack or speed. Now, I know there's like partners and so forth, we're in doubles, but the theory is basically that every point that you're spending in one stat cannot be put into another one. If your Garchomp needs 29 champions EVs in order to KO every single thing in the game, then any EV points you put in beyond the 29 is a waste, and you could put it in speed or into bulk instead. So even though this is like a greedy question, there's an opportunity cost in every spent EV, and the less EVs you have to spend in any given stat, the better, because it means you can then put them into other stats. So that one question then breaks down into some other questions. How much bulk do I need to live X? And X is whichever move from a commonly seen Pokemon. How much offense do I need to one-hit KO X? And again, X is then whatever bulky Pokemon you're trying to KO. How much speed do I need to outspeed X? And once again, then the question is, you know, what's the highest speed of a particular mon you're trying to KO? In past formats, for example, there was something like a Landorus. So you wanted your Water Ogerpon to be 1 point faster than the Landorus because now Ivy Cudgel could always one-hit KO it. And so any stat point you put in beyond that amount was a waste because you could instead put it into bulk or into attack and so forth. forth. Now, mind you, there's other Pokemon and maybe you want to outspeed those as well, so it's not necessarily a waste as a whole, but you're basically going to give EVs to specific mons based on what game state they're going to find themselves in, what mons they're going to be brought against, and then how you can live or KO them or outspeed them exactly. Which brings us to the next tool you need to master, calcs. Right here we have a damage calculator made for champions already. I will put a link in the description down below as well. And basically, you need to make this type of tool your best friend. Because if you don't know how much a certain move is going to do, how could you ever decide how much EVs you need to spend into your Pokemon to live it? So a great example in this particular format, Sneasler. Sneasler right now is the most popular Pokemon. It is the most played Pokemon. It's even beating Incin at this point. That's how broken it is. So the most common set is probably like max attack, max speed, and then in the nature, it's either Jolly or Adamant. Let's take Jolly right now. And then the move we're trying to live is close combat. Okay, all the Sneasers are running close combat, and your Incineroar, let's assume you're running an Incineroar right now, needs to survive this. Now, mind you, you could put on this attack a -1, which is what would happen after you intimidate it. But the problem is, all of these Sneasers, or almost all of them, are playing the white herb. So the intimidate drops are never active. This means what we really are trying to live is the close combat of a Sneasler without an Intimidate drop onto our Incineroar. Because if we can live that, that means that our Incineroar can intimidate it, the Intimidate fails, and now we get to click Parting Shot into that Sneasler or its partner, get back out, and then come back in and intimidate it again. That kind of repositioning and reusing of Intimidate, as well as, you know, using Parting Shot on it or partners, is absolutely crucial in winning Pokemon games. And so the survival of this close combat is so crucial that you probably want to EV to live it. So let's say we are plus defense minus special attack right here. We turn off Intimidate. Close combat is always one-hit KOing us. Okay, I maxed out the HP already, but without some defense, this close combat right here, it says so, is going to deal between 100 and 120% basically. So we need defense investment to make sure it never KOs. Alright, so let's see, does 10 do it? 10 gives us a 56% chance to still get KO'd. Alright, so that's not it. Does 12 do it? 43% chance to one-hit KO. Alright, that's not it. 13, 43 still, so that didn't really do much. 17, 31% chance to still get one-hit KO'd. Alright, let's try a 20, 12% chance to still get one-hit KO'd. Alright, let's go 24. Now we're always living. At this point, you think, okay, my Incineroar needs to be EV'd like this. Well, the question is, are you then sacrificing other matchups? Maybe there's a certain special attacker you also want to try to survive. Well, at one point, there's going to be sacrifices you have to make. Maybe you think, oh, actually, for me, it's fine that this only KOs like 70% of the time. Maybe you think that this 18 is fine enough. Now it's only KOing you 18% of the time. Maybe that's fine. Maybe you're settling for that. Or maybe you're not. Again, that depends on your team. That depends on how risky you're willing to play. But so this type of tool is going to be your best friend in order to define what's worth it. On the other hand, if you are building a Sneasler and you notice, damn, I am never getting KOs on all these Incineroars. They're all running 24. What am I gonna do? Well, maybe you think, actually, Jolly, I don't mind Jolly. I'll just click Adamant. And look at that. Suddenly, what was a never KO now KOs almost half the time. And if people were actually fine with being KO'd by Jolly sometimes, maybe they're only like 17. Cool, now you have a 75% chance to one-hit KO. So utilizing this tool is going to allow you to take your EV spreads from vibes to actually, you know, having put in some thought, not just 252, 252 everywhere. This is the tool you're going to use to define how much attack you're going to invest, how much defense you're going to invest, but not speed. This tool will not be used for the speed calculations. So going back to our team builder, let's say that they're almost all Jolly. So let's go for Jolly. Let's go back to, is 24 what we're going for? Let's see if 23 does the same thing. All right, 23 also still does it. Does 22 still do it? No. All right, so we need 23 in order for it to be confirmed. So we go back to our team builder and we decide, okay, this Incineroar has to be impish and needs 23 in defense. And now the rest can go into special defense. And this is our new Incineroar. And you can do similar things for your Floette. Maybe you notice, damn, in the Floette mirror, my Floette is always slower than their Floette. But I'm now this amount of bulk and I'm max special attack. I don't really want to sacrifice that. Well, you can start going, okay, so let's say I always get a Calm Mind up. How much does a Calm Minded Draining Kiss do into this Garchomp, do into this Sneasler, do into all of these particular mons? And then you can start either taking away from your special attack because you notice, oh, actually, the +1 Floette does this amount and it's enough. Or you notice, actually, the Sneasler, the Dire Claw from the Sneasler, only does X amount to me, so I'm actually fine taking a little bit out of my HP to put in a little more speed. And then you play some more games, you notice, oh, now my Floette is actually outspeeding them. Great. And that's how you get these spreads that, you know, sometimes look a little bit like this. They look a little wonky, a little weird, but all these numbers were usually derived from using calculators like this. But again, right now, before that, we were just in the vibe stage. This is what we were at in the vibe stage. Next, there's speed tiers. So like I mentioned, the calc thing we wouldn't really use for the speeds. We just use that for the offense and the defense. But speed tiers are also super, super important. After all, whenever your mon is max speed, that's great. You know that you're going to, at worst, speed tie other mons that are the same. Sneasler versus Sneasler, Incin versus Incin. But every time you're against another mon and their base stats are lower, you're kind of wasting the speed. And so while often it can be cool to just max speed everything, sometimes you don't really need it, especially if you run Tailwind on your team or Trick Room on your team. So this is where a site like Showdown can be very useful. For example, let's say Mega Gengar. We have Mega Gengar right here. Cool. We see that its speed is at 130 base. So we Timid Max. We notice that it maxes out at 200. So the stat 200 is going to be important to outspeed. Now, that is a very high stat. There's not many mons you will notice in the builder from before that outspeed that. But one mon that does is the Delphox. So if you notice, cool, my Delphox is at 204. Does it actually need to be 204? Or can we do something like this where it's 201? It's still outspeeding the Gengar, but we now have 3 extra points and we can put those into something like defense and live a move more easily. Now, I'm not saying that's optimal. Again, maybe there's other mons around this speed tier that you need to be outspeeding, but it's just a way to think about your speed EVs. Another great example is your Scarf Basculegion. The Choice Scarf item is going to 1.5 your speed, as you can see right here. So how fast does our Basculegion need to be to outspeed that Mega Gengar? Let's make it Adamant Nature first. All into speed, and now we have 130. 130 times 1.5 is 195. So you are never outspeeding Mega Gengar with an Adamant Bass. That's telling us, oof, if our goal is to be able to last respect it at one point, it has to be Jolly. So we have already defined, cool, we're Jolly. However, 143 times 1.5 is 214. So now we're actually too fast for our own good, or at least we're wasting EVs potentially. You know, let's say we're maxing out our attack. That means we have 2 points into defense. This thing is relatively frail in the defense side. 143, we could drop it down a little. Let's try 135 times 1.5. That's 202. Cool. We are still outspeeding, and now we have a bunch of extra defense we can put in here. Now, that doesn't mean that this is optimal, because maybe there's a mirror match. Your opponent is also playing a Scarf Basculegion, and theirs is Jolly Max, and now suddenly, maybe in an end game, they always get last respects against you. You just turned a 50% win rate into a 0% win rate. So there's still reasons to do this, and your vibes-based calc might still be correct. But if you know, oh, actually, I'm never bringing Basculegion to the mirror. I'm bringing King Gambit, because King Gambit deals with this Basculegion. I can afford to do this type of calc. Cool. Now you just got a way bulkier Basculegion than anyone else because you knew you could get away with this. And that once again brings us back to the question, what can I get away with? Finally, there's a third stage, and not everyone is necessarily going to agree exactly with these levels, by the way. I'm not saying I'm some EVing guru. There's people who are way better at this than I am. But I think for newer players, this level system is a cool way to visualize it. Level 3 is when you've done all the things we've already done in thinking, and now you're no longer just considering one mon versus one mon. So imagine the format is semi-solved. You know, it means there's specific defined teams that you're mostly going to be facing. You know, you're going to walk into a tournament and you know 80% of my rounds are going to be teams I've already faced on ladder. They're teams that have already had good results. Teams are very defined, and so your game plans into those teams are very defined, which means there are specific game states that are coming up time and time again. And now that means you can inform your entire game plan around specific calcs coming up in these specific game states. That is something that you cannot do day one. It is impossible. Early metas are more vibes based, but over time things solve. And so for example, right now in Scarlet and Violet in Reg I, we have CSR Zama that's more defined. So there's people trying to calc for specifically body press, astral barrage, double ups and so forth. Because the meta is so defined, we actually know these calcs are coming up time and time again. There's game states that are coming up time and time again. And if you can calc your mon specifically for these game states, you're going to get wins that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten. But you can't if everyone is still running weird teams because none of the game states are coming up time and time again. But so if you're new to this is not something you should be thinking about too much just yet. I'm not even usually EVing for stuff like this because it's extremely hard. Early on in the format, the first few days, we are just playing on vibes. When you first pick up a team, you are EVing completely on vibes as well. After you've played some games, maybe you want to do some of the thinking. If you have a bunch of experience already, of course, you can already do this. Again, like that Sneasler close combat into instant thing, you could have done that on day one because you played Regulation H or something like that. And then as the format progresses and you start noticing, damn, there's this specific game that keeps coming up because everyone is playing the same team with the same mons, with the same calcs and so forth, that's when you can start optimizing for specific game states. And that was my TED Talk. Hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.